So welcome everybody to another Quantum Connect webinar. I'm Juzar Thingna. I'm an associate editor with the American Physical Society. And today's webinar will be focused on how quantum computing is revolutionizing drug discovery, personalized medicine, and complex biological simulations, and paving the way for breakthroughs in healthcare. APS, in partnership with Johns Hopkins Science Diplomacy Hub, welcomes you to an innovative international event dedicated to advancing global collaboration and understanding in quantum science and technology. This is one of several worldwide initiatives to celebrate 2025 as the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology. Our experience helps connect scientific communities, industry leaders, policymakers, national labs, and the public, fostering discussions on the transformative impact of quantum technologies. All previous webinars from this series can be found on APS's YouTube channel. Today, we have a fifth Quantum Connect webinar in the series with Clarice Aiello, Anouar Benali, Karim Essafi, Alexey Galda, Siddhi Ramesh, and Nambu. I'll give each one of you a chance to introduce yourselves. So let's start with that. And we'll go in order so that everybody has a chance. And Clarice, please, why don't you go first?
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. It's weird because I'm a little bit the oddball person in this panel. Clarice Aiello. I am the CSO of the Quantum Biology Institute. I am trained as a quantum engineer, and right now we are working on trying to finally prove or refute that biology actually runs on quantum. This is slightly different from quantum computing for healthcare. It's instead of quantum for biology, it's quantum in biology. But I hope you see that I'll argue that there's also a lot of applications of quantum in biology for potential healthcare transformation. Nice to meet you all.
Absolutely. This would be a fantastic point of view to hear, and I'm looking forward to that. Next on my list, Anwar.
Hi, thanks for having me. So my name is Anouar Benali, and since October 2024, I have led the High Performance Electronic Structure Theory Group at Qubit Pharmaceuticals. And before that, I spent 14 years at Argonne National Lab as one of the lead computational scientists for material science and quantum chemistry. So at Qubit, Qubit Pharmaceutical is a deep tech company founded by leading academics in quantum chemistry, in molecular dynamics, force fields, and pharmacology. And the company was built around this central realization that force fields or traditional force fields are reaching their limits, and we are not able to predict anymore any properties of quantum chemistry. So if we want to have targeted therapies and using mRNA or any type of treatment that is requiring a lot of accuracy, we need to go beyond classical systems, and we need to start using quantum mechanics and high performance computing, AI, to be able to predict the behavior and the accuracy that we need to be able to generate the next generation of drugs.
Quite interesting, and I'm looking forward to your views from a chemistry angle. That would be fascinating. So next on my screen is Karim.
Hey, I'm Karim Essafi. I'm the Director of Research and Technology at QunaSys in Europe. I've been working quantum for the past 3-4 years now, focusing on early FTQC algorithms in particular, and some quantum machine learning and their application in chemistry and pharma in particular. And yeah, my background is in theoretical physics. Been doing research for the past 10 years on frustrated magnets, both classical and quantum spin models. And one of our main focus of development is on quantum-centric HPC workflows, so how to make quantum work together with current high-performance computing capabilities. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks Karim, for that introduction. And next, Alexey.
Hey everyone, my name is Alexey Galda. I am an Associate Scientific Director of Quantum Algorithms and Applications at Moderna. My work focuses on developing and applying quantum computing methods to accelerate mRNA medicine design. So Moderna has been a pioneer in mRNA therapeutics, as you know. And part of my role specifically, is to explore how quantum computing can complement the classical approaches to solve computational problems in drug discovery.
Wow, fantastic. And Siddhi, you're next on my screen.
Sounds great. Hi, everyone. My name is Ramesh. I am a physician scientist at the University of Chicago, and I also run an AI biomarker startup called Slideflow Labs. My research in quantum is the primary focus of my sort of academic research platform. We explore quantum computing and quantum sensing platforms for particularly biomarker discovery as it pertains to either diagnostics or therapeutic development. We collaborate a lot with a company called Inflection, so we do a lot of co-development with them. So from the algorithms perspective, we have been looking at sort of multimodal feature selection and applying quantum machine learning to that. And from a sensing perspective, it's just sort of evaluating which platforms provide advantages in particular applications. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Siddhi. And finally, Nambu.
Hi everyone. Yeah, thanks for having me. So at least compared to everyone here, I guess I have more of a student background. So I would say like in the past 3-4 months, I've been jumping around. I just graduated from Lafayette College, and I was visiting like undergrad researcher at Yale, working on quantum algorithms and quantum machine learning for more like computational chemistry, and I would say like applications more in general. And then after that, I had some internship at like Microsoft Quantum, like in general, like digital quantum algorithms, like applications of them. And currently, I'm a first year grad student in electrical engineering and computer science at MIT, and I plan to work a little bit more towards the experimental quantum computing side. But yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you all for being here. It's fantastic to have you all. And let me start with a more general question. So what was your first quantum moment, the experience that first sparked your interest in quantum tech or quantum science, and that set you on your career path? And I would like to get all your views, because everybody's views are going to be different, and it's going to be enriching for our audience members here. So I'll go in the same order. Clarice.
You really want to go for the oddball again. Okay, I'll tell you about the way I got hooked onto quantum biology. I am trained in quantum sensing. So for the audience, the very broad idea is that if you use a quantum object like an electron as a sensor, you can mathematically prove that your measurement is improved. In other words, the sensor quantumness enhances the measurement. I did my PhD work on quantum sensors in diamond that work at room temperature and in the messy conditions of the diamond lattice. Right now, people use those sensors as very good magnetosensors. People put them in cells to learn about classical biology.
Yeah.
And by chance, as a postdoc, I ended up in a chemistry department. And that was not my main project, but by talking to chemists, I realized that chemists had known for decades about electrons within proteins that were acting as something that myself as a bona fide quantum physicist would call quantum sensing. So chemists were aware of quantum sensing like processes happening within proteins in test tubes in a way that a physicist would call quantum sensing. So I completely shifted my interest, and now I work on those nature-made potential quantum sensors, especially of magnetic fields. So if you will, it's all about electron spin physics in proteins. And the cool thing is that you can use this potential lever, endogenous quantum lever within proteins to, in the future, maybe in 20-25 years, maybe to control part of the biology. So my encounter with quantum biology came at the interface of my quantum physics training with being immersed into a chemistry department and talking to people. And I think people should talk more. Physicists should talk more to chemists and to other people. And I think that in the future, the cool science will actually be done at the interface of disciplines where barriers, they melt down.
Wow, fantastic, Clarice. And I fully agree with you. People should definitely talk more. And I think quantum science is all about collaborations and getting people from different fields together. And that's also what our webinar series is all about. Next, Anouar.
Thanks, Clarice. That was really very, very interesting take. So mine was a little bit similar in the sense that, when I started my master's degree, I was doing ballistic transport for electrons in semiconductors. And one of the main approximations in that field is that you take very semi-classical approximations. And basically, you can predict one property, but not the others. And the more or the less approximations you take, the more accurate you get. But even at that point, whatever property you try to show, it's at the cost of other properties that you lose. And you cannot really be predictive. And if you want to be predictive, you need to reduce this type of approximations. Then when I did my PhD, I decided to go from semi-classical to mean field theory. And then I discovered the wonderful world of whatever solution you want, we will find an exchange and correlation functional that will give you that answer. So you never can be really predictive. The best that you can do is reproduce one solution and hope for the best for the others. Then that frustration led to more frustrations, which were to go even less approximations. And basically, this became this Jacob's ladder of methods trying to solve Schrödinger equation with less and less approximations. And basically, what you find yourself then is starting to solve many-body theory, and I started doing quantum Monte Carlo methods and developing them, then full CI methods, and you start realizing that what you are fighting is an exponential problem. And trying to solve or approximate Schrödinger equation with no approximation means you have to head-on hit the wall of an exponential method. So you can do it with exascale, and you can do it with brute force type of situations. But at some point, if you want to tackle interesting problems, you need strong correlations, you need van der Waals forces, you need this type of quantum effects that can only be solved by reducing approximations and just head-on tackling the quantum problem. So this is where I merge chemistry and physics and computer science and to be able to solve the same problem.
Thanks, Anouar. And it seems that from this very microscopic world that you come from, it also displays how complex quantum problems can really become, and it's fantastic to hear this point of view. So next on my screen is Karim. Karim, what was your aha moment?
Well, my aha moment came very late. So I would say like only just before I joined the field. So I did my PhD in theoretical physics, studying phase transitions and critical phenomena. One of the other PhD students in my lab was working on the toric code, which is relevant for quantum error correction. But it's only a few years later when I was a postdoc at the Paul Scherrer Institute in Switzerland, where people were talking about quantum computing, that I had some interest in it. And really what got me in was from cryptography. So I was looking into cryptography, crypto systems, and looking at post-quantum cryptography. And then one of my old friends that was in Japan told me that the company he was working for, that I'm working for now, QunaSys, which is a Japanese startup, and they were planning to branch out and expand to Europe. And he was asking me if I was interested in joining after I finished my Marie Curie fellowship in Switzerland. And that's what got me into it. So initially it was really from cryptography and complexity theory perspective. And then I got into actual quantum computing and quantum algorithms. So.
Awesome. And it seems the common theme that is building here is complexity. And Alexey, what's your path been?
Well, for me, there have been actually two such clear quantum moments in my career, both of which changed my professional trajectory in many major ways, from fundamentally altering my primary research direction to leaving academia altogether. The first one happened before COVID. I was still a research assistant professor at UChicago, working on a theory of open quantum systems. So I'm a condensed matter theorist by training. But then around the same time, first quantum computers became available on the cloud. And moreover, they allowed the ability to control them with using microwave sort of low level pulse level control, which offered unique experimental abilities to test my theoretical predictions on these small dissipative quantum systems. And I ended up in my most productive part of my research career. And so sort of the rest is history. I transitioned from being a theoretical physicist to quantum computing scientist, essentially. And then the second one came when I sort of realized that many biological problems like protein side chain packing or mRNA design are mathematically similar to the hardest combinatorial problems in physics and in general. And so quantum computing offered the new fundamentally sort of way to tackle these problems. And that's when I decided to move from theoretical research more to applications.
Thanks, Alexey. And so you seem to continue on the theme of complexity, adding noise to the problem, which makes it even better in some sense, right? And next, Siddhi.
Yeah, so I early on when I was in medical school, I had worked with a startup company that spun out of the University of Chicago that like focused on error correction. So that was my maybe initial exposure to quantum, but didn't really do much with it beyond that for the next few years. My research really focused, my background's in data science and in medicine, particularly in oncology. So we were sort of exploring multimodal biomarker discovery. So taking a bunch of different types of data, fusing them together and trying to see if that enhances prediction or prognostication of whatever endpoint you're of interest. What we were finding though is that it's a pretty challenging combinatorial problem, and going into this theme of complexity, even regardless of how sophisticated your sort of machine learning approaches are, you're always sort of in this regime where you have a low set of samples because patient samples are hard to come by, and you have a really high dimensional feature space. So, we were exploring like other approaches and methods, and my PI had mentioned, there's a lot of interest in sort of quantum computing, quantum algorithms, or there is a research that's been done in this space. So I reached back out to the folks that I had been working with in the past, looking at quantum error correction, talking to them about is there any potential application space. And then there was this program that we're still actually participating in called Quantum for Biology by the Wellcome Leap Foundation. So that was the whole effort of that program, is to essentially create hybrid quantum sensing or algorithm platforms with applications specific to biology. So we've been participating in that for the last 3 years, and we sort of advanced to the final stages of it. So that work has been sort of ongoing and has now led to sort of offshoots exploring quantum sensing with the Chan Zuckerberg Institute. And we just got notified just yesterday that we advanced with the NIH Quantum Sensing Challenge. So I think that there's a lot of biological interest in exploring applications, but there isn't a lot of sort of strong applied work just yet.
Thanks, Siddhi. That was fantastic. And coming back to this complexity and also coming back to tackling quantum computing, not just challenges in quantum computing, but using quantum computing as means of application towards healthcare from various different angles. This is the fascinating part, and that's what our panel here is sort of expert in different areas. And lastly, Nambu, what has been your quantum moment?
Yeah, I guess my quantum moment's been quite more recent. I would say that I had like this college grant to do like a research work at Yale, and at that time I was as just like to get started with quantum computing, I was just doing basic things like VQ on like an H2 molecule, and then I was thinking about like looking into like larger things to do, like like something that's more impactful, like how do we like do these things like in like machine learning, like doing, because my background is like more in math and actually like more in like mathematical oncology, where I was trying to fit models to like tumor data and that type of stuff. And I understood how difficult that could be. And then I was doing more like computational chemistry problems. And then it suddenly dawned on me, like, I mean, my grades weren't bad, but then so I was looking into these problems and that my PI gave me. And I was like, yeah, like this small molecule shouldn't be that difficult to find the exact solution. Well, it turned out I was wrong. And it was like, yeah. And because of, those types of experience, I actually, when I started my work at Yale, I had no like courses, like formal courses on quantum mechanics at all. And I was just, picking it up along the way as, as I was learning and doing research. So yeah.
Awesome. So then let me pose the next question to all of you. How has this landscape of quantum technology, especially in healthcare, changed or evolved since the time you guys stepped into your specific roles? And what kind of developments have surprised you the most in this? I'll go with you, Clarice, once again.
Can I suggest that we start from the other side so that
Sure.
poor them. I mean,
Sure, let's do that. Let's have a little bit of a change. Nambu, let's start with you this time around.
Sounds good then. Yeah, so I would say like in the past 2-3 years that I've been in this work on quantum, I would say that by talking to people and doing research on so one of my research was actually like on like modeling types of molecular interactions for like drug discovery, and how do we actually can do that with like quantum algorithms. And I would say I was also looking into like other like like pharma chance, like here we have like Moderna, but also like Pfizer and Roche. I feel like I was actually like quite surprised at how these pharmaceutical industries have already like started their quantum partnerships like really early. And I believe like I think there's a health insurance company called Prison that's also like looking into these applications. So it's not just about finding drugs or like solving things, but like also like for like other things in like insurance and like security for data as well. And yeah, and I'm also like following like other theoretical advances on machine learning too. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Nambu. I mean, I agree that health. When we think of healthcare, insurance is probably not the first thing we think of, but it's definitely a part of healthcare, and it's good to see that quantum computing is finding, applications even in those arenas. Siddhi, what about you?
Yeah, so, I think even spanning back 4 or 5 years, there's obviously been a lot of interest and appetite well beyond that. I think what I've been noticing a lot, at least in my space, which is in cancer, is that there's a lot more funding and effort to go into applied research. So, if you go back 5 years ago, there was no specific NIH programs or anything like that were focused on exploring quantum applications. Now there's multiple. And even at University of Chicago, there's sort of multiple groups sort of pivoting over from proving theoretical and sort of toy problems that prove quantum advantage in a specific scenario to how do we translate that into, a regime. And I think obviously it takes time, the technologies have to develop, and then you have to prove out what you're doing with sort of fixed, maybe synthetic problems. But over time, now I think we're in that transition phase where people are looking more at what are some real applications that we can do today? And if we can't do them today, what are the sort of steps that need to happen from a technology maturity standpoint, whether it's on the computing platform side or the sensing platform side?
Right. Alexey.
Sure. When I started, quantum computing in healthcare was largely theoretical. That's about 5-6 years ago. I remember working on quantum optimization algorithms for protein side chain packing problem. And, we were solving really tiny toy models at the time. Now, today, we've demonstrated on real quantum hardware, quantum methods that can approach the performance of classical commercial solvers for mRNA secondary structure prediction. We shifted from pure theory to large-scale hardware demonstrations, including simulations using all of the available 156 qubits on IBM devices, for example, and correctly simulating 60 nucleotide mRNA sequences, something that I wouldn't have imagined possible so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That sounds really fascinating, and I'm sure there's much more to come in that arena. This is just the beginning. Karim, what have been surprising events for you?
I mean, what I've been surprising is when I joined was that how much people want to collaborate to push things forward. Like I feel like I think because it's like very advanced research is still being done in quantum. There's a lot of people that have a background in academia that wants to work together to push things forward, and that has been quite refreshing. Even between companies that one would think would be competing, that they actually really want to work together to push the industry forward. And one of the changes of the last 3-4 years has also been shifting from NISQ more towards early FTQC and FTQC algorithms. And also there's a more and more interest in quantum machine learning, or more like quantum enhanced machine learning, where we take like classical machine learning and try to enhance it with some quantum features. There's the work done on quantum circuit board machines, using it as a prior for like LSTM networks. So those have been like quite the interesting one. And one that goes to what Siddhi was saying is also, and also Alexey, was shifting away from like, okay, pure complexity theory analysis. We're like, okay, we know this is the quantum advantage on paper, but actually what is the actual practical advantage that we can extract once we put this on the machine? Yeah.
Right. And ultimately, that's what counts, right?
Exactly.
Whether the
Yes.
machine is able to give you the right results or at least tentatively good results or not.
Absolutely, yeah.
What about you, Anwar? What has been the most surprising moments for you?
I think I will follow on what has been said, especially with what Alexey said. That one thing that when I started quantum chemistry, or at least when we start removing beyond mean field theory and starting to go to something a little bit more accurate and predictive, was always something that is just academic pursuit. You do small molecules, you take small basis set, you do an SU3G, and you're happy, and it means nothing because basically it's a toy problem, and the predictability of it is completely null. And you had the whole field of force fields, because what matters is not even just doing the energies and solving the Schrodinger equation. You have to solve the time-dependent one. You need dynamics. You need atoms to move. You need proteins to shake, to exchange electrons, to be natural, to reproduce nature. And to represent all these very complex systems, we used to use balls and sticks and semi-classical methods, and we are in the Newtonian regime, and an atom is a small ball, and an interaction is a stick or a spring.
Right.
And you had people just like tuning these force fields at hand, and whatever result you want, you needed like 20 years of 16 postdoc sacrifice at the hostel of your force field. And the next day you had AI showing up and just like clearing the table and starting to generate significantly more data and being able to reduce a lot of these hand-tuned things. But what even destroyed everything, or at least is really destroying all these concepts, is the fact that we're starting to have very accurate GPUs, very, very fast exascale machines. The example of Argonne in the Chicago area with exascale machines, at Oak Ridge with exascale machines, at Sandia with at this point, exascale is becoming almost a cheap word. Just go and compute. The computational power is so strong that now we are able to have this foundation model. So we moved from large language models that are able to just predict or guess what would be the next energy to, for example, at Qubit, we have this, our foundation model that is Phoenix Bio model that is able to learn not the energies, but the quantum mechanics rules that rule how molecules react together. So we are able to even go beyond what the model has been trained on. And the synthetic data that we are training on, we are now able, AI has completely revolutionized how we are dealing with data. And it's not anymore a race to be able to find the next cure or something, as much as it is a race to generate the most accurate data to be able to train your models. And I think this has been a real revolution, either from computational point of view, from AI point of view, or from the quantum use of the knowledge that we have about molecules and systems.
Wow. Clarice, back
Now
to you.
for the oddball answer. So I think that what's more surprising is the mounting evidence that biology might depend on quantum at very complex levels. Let me try to explain what I mean, right? I think that most people here, when we talk about quantum computing for biology, we talk about modeling things at a very small scale. Right, because biology is composed of atoms, and atoms are linked to chemical reactions, so to chemical links. So everything is quantum and should be described by all those quantum equations. However, I think there are, there's evidence that is incomplete, but that keeps on becoming more and more compelling, that nature might depend on quantum in more surprising ways. For example, one level above this, above like everything is made out of atoms, lies the fact, for example, that enzymatic activity, at least in test tubes, unambiguously only happens because of the tunneling of both electrons and protons. Okay, so which is fascinating, and I think that the classical analogy would be the transistor. An enzyme is as quantum as your classical laptop. However, there are, again, there's incomplete but compelling data that nature might be using true quantum levels of classification to function. For example, the quantum sensing-like phenomena that I was talking about in proteins would correspond to the simplest form of technological quantum sensing, and that only works because of superpositions. It's in fact superpositions that do the sensing, and now there is mounting evidence. There is no doubt that proteins in solution, that's how they're sensing, for example, magnetic fields via the help of superpositions. But there's mounting evidence that superpositions survive inside cells for long enough for them to sense tiny magnetic fields, for example. And the poster children of this are birds that navigate following the tiny magnetic field of the Earth. So I think that all card-carrying physicists would agree that superpositions being maintained in cells is a high level of quantum functioning. And the final level that I'm not convinced if nature uses it or not for function has to do with the possibility that entanglement is being used for function. For example, superradiance has been found in quantum compounds at room temperature. And there are some theories that I don't subscribe to that posit that entanglement might play a role, but I work at the level of the superposition. And right now, I think there's a lot of evidence showing that superposition might be key to how organisms work.
Fantastic. So at least it seems for quantum in biology, at least for the case of magnetoreception and likely and similar feature phenomena that we see, it could be really quantum, and that's fantastic to hear. For the next question, this might be more interesting to the students or young professionals who are trying to make, the shift perhaps to the quantum industry. Is what were your challenges, and what were the main obstacles that you faced, and when you transited from your traditional, probably non-computer science oriented background to this healthcare and using quantum computing. When you made this transition, what were the basic challenges that you had? I'll start with Nambu again so that everybody gets a chance and nobody's first. Nambu.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I would say because I also come from a more math and CS background, I would say one of the main advice would be to develop some physical intuition. So let's say you're doing CS, you're trying to build a website, you're building an app, or managing a database. It's what the results are, and as long as the results match what you expect, that would probably be it, or you can improve it, sure. But for these type of but for quantum algorithms, it's more about let's say you have the results, but also you have to go back to the problem, or if you're doing it in the more application side, then how does it actually make sense in the applied sense? And also the other thing would be that quantum algorithms is not like a one size fits all type of computing. It's I would say that it's kind of widely believed that it would be really great, but only for a small select number of problems. So it's also very important to develop an intuition of when these types of problems could be used with quantum algorithms, and the other would probably be better with something that's easier, because you don't want to overkill the problem, right?
Thanks, Nambu. So it seems that intuition is the key to getting into healthcare and quantum computing in general. What about you, Siddhi?
Yeah, kind of similar to what Nam was saying, but I think there's a lot, especially in the application space, like having a deep domain expertise of your specific problem is important. Um, I think at least from a quantum algorithm side, for the foreseeable future, it's going to be sort of hybrid approaches where you offload some part of that that routine to a quantum computer, and understanding exactly where the bottlenecks are and how to optimize the problem to load it onto the computer is something that we've been focusing a lot on, especially with sort of the size constraints that you're dealing with. So I think deep domain expertise in like that application space that you're exploring, kind of to not over engineer things, but also to understand where the bottlenecks are and sort of how a quantum computer or a sensor could help with that.
Right. Alexey, what have been your biggest challenges?
I guess my advice to students would be, don't be afraid of interdisciplinary work. The most exciting progress happens at the boundaries of fields. And also, I think another one would be, it's never too late to switch fields. Many people have successfully done it years and years after getting their PhD, including yours truly. So yeah, those two simple advice.
Fantastic, Alexey. And I fully agree with both those things. Never too early to, or never too late to switch, perhaps, and always be curious. Karim.
I think also like to expand on that is also don't be afraid of asking questions, because sometimes, especially at this interdisciplinary stuff, the problem is that two disciplines can have the same different languages for the same thing. If you just take, for example, full configuration interaction is used in chemistry, whereas in physics we talk more about exact diagonalization, whereas they are the same core concepts. But if you go from one field to another, you're just like wondering what they're talking about. Just ask the question, and yeah, and don't be afraid of people using sometimes like very sophisticated jargon to mean something that is sometimes very simple to explain.
Fantastic. Anouar.
I think in my case, of course, all these points are extremely important. I would push also that asking questions, but also never settling for this is how we used to do things and this is why we do them, and never taking that for an answer. Always asking why method exists, but also understanding the limitations of the theories that you use. I feel like, unfortunately, in the field, we are seeing more and more, because methods, code, software are becoming so easy to use, almost push button type of methods, that a lot of people are forgetting what is the engine driving them. And unfortunately, we find ourselves, if you use a theory level or an approximation without understanding its limitation, it's like driving blindfolded near a cliff and hoping that driving at 100 miles an hour, you're not going to end up in a ditch. So really take the time to understand what you're doing, but mainly take the time to understand the limitation of whatever theory you're using. There's no absolute truth. There is nothing that is wrong for everything. There are only things that are true for a specific set of things that have been made for that specific theory. So that's the important thing. Understand deeply what you are doing and what you are using, but also try to expand beyond your own knowledge by knowing how algorithms are working, how you can cross to the next field, what are the people in different fields or next by fields are doing, to be able to really have that ability to, as everybody said, cross the bridge between different domains.
Fantastic. Clarice.
Doing interdisciplinary science is hard. So I think that at some point we all need to learn to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. No one is going to know everything. It's all about talking to people and really trying to communicate. That's super hard. I think there's also a advantage not only in going deep. Of course, you need to go deep somewhere, but there's also an advantage of going broad. Because that exposes you to thinking a little bit outside the box. And finally, something that a mentor once told me, and it took me a long time to understand what they meant. Avoid people who give you Yoda answers. Try to find people who actually give you clear answers and with whom you can communicate. If you cannot communicate clearly, at some point, there's an end to that. So avoiding Yoda answers was a very important advice in my growing up as a scientist. It's super weird, but here's what I would say to the budding scientists. And there's room for everyone in scientists and in quantum physics.
Amazing. And fully agreed on that, Clarice. I mean, good, clear communication is the key even to good collaborations, ultimately. People come from different fields, different backgrounds, and the better you communicate, the better the collaboration is. So we'll shift things a little bit now in the interest of saving time. I have a bunch of questions to ask all of you, but I wouldn't have the time to go through each one of you and get your opinions. But I would love to hear whatever opinions come. So feel free to chime in, feel free to answer, and we're all happy to hear you, obviously. So my next, question to all of you is, which quantum computing application areas do you believe will deliver the first commercially significant breakthroughs in healthcare? Do you see that sort of on the brim at the moment? Do you see it sort of in the next 4 or 5 years? And why do you think that that will happen? So anybody can just chime in, and I know it's a tough question to begin with, but would love to hear the domain expert views, on this.
I mean, I can offer one point of view on this.
Sure.
I believe that near-term breakthroughs will come from molecular optimization problems, like mRNA design or protein ligand binding, things like this. These problems are small enough to map onto this near-term quantum processors. Sort of they offer complex enough problem instances that they can't be just tackled using what I would say is, so they're small enough to map onto quantum devices, but they're large enough that the classical methods, including the most recent AI models, often struggle to explore the entire design space. I'll leave it.
I would just
go ahead.
I would just push a little bit by saying that I don't think necessarily that a revolution will just appear just thanks to a quantum computer by itself, either want it be fault tolerant or not. I think that what happens is that we need to remember that a quantum computer is just a machine that solves an exponential problem that drives back scaling that is exponential to something like n to the third or n to the second or n to the fourth, depending on how lucky you are, how noisy it is, or whatever type of algorithm we have. I think that the main thing is that if we look at it as a problem of just reducing the scale, so making something complex solve faster, if we start looking at those problems and start trying to solve them with whatever way we have now, what we're creating is probably going to be some type of transition that is going to be a little bit like what we had when the GPUs appeared, where you used to pay a lot of amount of computer time and energy and a lot of megawatts to be able to solve a problem. And that seamless transition will happen with QPUs, whatever shape they have, whatever form they have in a few years when they stabilize, we will be able to use them that way. So I think that we don't necessarily even need to wait for the future to happen with the quantum computer. If we start tackling the problems now and starting to reduce that complexity and try to tackling it, I think we will be able to solve those problems. And however, I completely agree with you, Alex, that for the small problems that you're describing, those are absolutely great opportunities to try full quantum chemistry on them. Either wanted to be by using AI plus quantum chemistry or quantum computing directly as a brute force. A combination of all these type of things will provide, I think, the easiest low-hanging fruit that we will be able to use.
Awesome. Thank you. And throughout this conversation, we have heard things like system domain expertise, and we have all been very sincere in explaining the different aspects. And so my next question to all of you is, how do you navigate the hype versus reality in quantum computing? Unfortunately, this is the reality of life today. There is hype out there, and especially when communicating with investors, stakeholders, or even to the public.
I can give an answer a little bit. I think one of the most important things is just to be honest about the capabilities and not try to overhype it. We know that there is some advantage we can have in quantum, be it either from a pure complexity theory perspective, but also from a practical side. We know that this is coming. The only question we don't know is that when is this exactly going to come? This was happening already with AI a few years back. I remember like before the ChatGPT moment, I was talking with some people and I was like, oh, AI is just a hype. No one is gonna care about it. And just like a year or two later, like you had like, I don't know how many people started using ChatGPT, like week one, it was like millions or like tens of millions of people. And if you look back, actually, one of the first like general public articles about AI gonna revolutionize work came in like in the 1980s. So it was like a paper in like 1984 from Business Week magazine talking about like, oh, AI is here. And it took like another 30 years before we saw that actually really happening. And the same is going to happen in quantum. I think it's going to happen a bit faster, or at least I hope, than 30 years from now. But it's just like, we know that this is coming. So we just have to be honest about it and just like show that the advancements that have been done over the last 3-4 years and just like clearly explain that to people in an honest manner.
Awesome. And Siddhi, maybe I should also ask you this because you come more from a biology background and also a bioinformatics background. How do you see the hype versus reality?
It's kind of similar to what everyone's kind of been echoing. I think near term, it's hard to say that there's going to be just widespread applications across a variety of different problem spaces. We, in the process of doing this like 3-year program, we spent a lot of time thinking about what specific problems are we running into issues with that scale sort of exponentially, and how can we scale that back down to polynomially? And then even so, you're sort of forced to sort of reduce the problem size up front to a very small state to define it so that it can actually be loaded onto the computer. So there's a very limited subset of problems that can actually be useful. And in those, can you find places where the data that you're actually playing with can be downsized enough while still retaining its integrity? I think there's definitely going to be progress, and I think there's a lot of importance in focusing on scaling those problems down, trying to translate them, and trying to see what works, where you're seeing advantage. And it's an iterative process, but I don't know if it's going to happen this year, next year, but in the next 5 to 10-year horizon, I think there's certainly going to be a lot of advances. But it sort of requires the groundwork to be laid now, or otherwise, in 5 to 10 years, you can't just say, "Okay, now I'm ready."
Awesome. And at the end of the day, it's the results that are the output that matter, and thinking along those lines to even navigate this hype versus reality. There are classical approaches out there. Alexey mentioned a little bit about these protein bindings and how these small problems, even on the quantum computer, could be classical approaches. What are the other kind of such problems, that could possibly beat classical approaches? Maybe not today, but maybe in the next 5 years. Nambu, maybe you should have a crack at this one.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think for me it would probably be something more like some like analog simulations. Like I would say like on like quantum dynamics side. So for me my probably like short understanding would be, let's say you want to do some type of protein and drug screening, and you want to try to model like the interactions between them. QMMM, where you can try to do the quantum dynamics side, would be one approach. Or another thing would be, this is probably more like a biological side, but also you can try to like simplify some of like the more complex models onto let's say like energy transfer. You can do it back to like simpler models that you can do on specific hardware. So I would say probably like the probably like most near-term advantages would come alongside on how good I would say like hardware that can be developed in terms of like fidelity and gate operations and that type of stuff. But I also want to echo what everyone had said here, that it's not like we shouldn't wait until something happens in terms of we have a good like photon quantum computer to actually make this stuff happen. But rather, we should dive into it and keep looking for problems. And yeah.
Awesome.
I have a wish for the panelists. Can I share my wish?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Because I think there is a quantum biology problem that I don't know, I don't think this is going to happen tomorrow, but I think that quantum computers could really, really help. So hear me out. and again, leaving a lot of details out. When people talk about molecular recognition, the simplest model that has been around for a long time has to do with like lock and key. So there's a lock molecule, a key molecule comes and basically locks into and doing molecular recognition. One of the flavors of quantum bio for which there is consistent evidence, correlative evidence, has to do with a molecular recognition a theory that has to do with lock, key, and vibration, so that the key molecule also has to match some vibrational signature, which I believe is explained by some sort of noise-assisted tunneling process when electrons can either borrow or dump a little bit of energy to the environment so that they can tunnel more efficiently. I think and I wish that people who care about quantum computing in healthcare would take this problem seriously, because again, this might help us screen for drugs in a way that, for example, it would be way more rational and a little bit less blind. I am very curious as to whether quantum computing can help specifically with this problem of molecular recognition and of whether it depends or not on molecular vibrational signatures.
Awesome. So seems like nature is already using some kind of a two-factor authentication here, right? I mean, just besides
that's what I would like people to simulate in
like,
quantum computing.
It's something that you send on, your basically on your mobile, you get a message for an OTP or something. So yeah, fantastic. Now, in terms of healthcare systems, how should they prepare for both the benefits and risks of quantum technologies? Maybe I should direct this question to Alexey first.
Good question. Very good question. I think healthcare systems should prepare in two ways. First, come the benefits, obviously. We need to build readiness to incorporate these quantum enhanced models into our pipelines. For example, by developing hybrid quantum classical infrastructure and also training our scientists in both AI and quantum methods. Now, the risks is another essential part of preparing the industry for this. And we need to recognize that quantum will arrive gradually and unevenly, like Anouar mentioned, perhaps combining classical and quantum compute. And the problem here is for healthcare specifically is that the timelines of our problems, when you develop a drug and then you go through the clinical trials, this is a very well scheduled multi-year process, and matching that with the unpredictable progress of this nascent field, quantum hardware, is pretty impossible. So that's one of the challenges. You need to make sure that you're ready for that advance to implement it immediately, but also prepare yourself that you just might be off sync with that in the problems that you're working on. So there's a risk to this as well. That's what I'd say.
If I can echo just a little bit what Alexey said, I think it's an important thing, and this also joins back to the question about the hype. I think if we want to have the healthcare system be ready for the quantum revolution, we need to be very cognizant of the fact that there is a serious hype, and we need to be able to discern what is real and what is not. If we want to talk about applications and we move away from computer science, pure computer science, it's like we are discussing the GPUs for healthcare. The point is not to discuss the GPUs themselves. This is a different field. This is the domain of computer scientists. If we want to be on the healthcare side, we need to discuss what we're going to be doing with them and what are the type of problems we are trying to solve. And this should not be depending on the hardware. nobody, or at least in the past, we did not start developing new methods because we knew that maybe GPUs will come in the future. GPUs happened and we took advantage of them because we were already ready and we had the needs for GPU faster solving methods. So now what we are expecting from healthcare is to understand that we need to step up and we need to start solving the problems that need to be solved rather than just using the same methods from the 70s and trying to fit triangles in squares. But now we have to treat a triangle as a triangle, a quantum problem as a quantum problem, started to see that if you want your protein to just bind or your molecule to bind, that's Van der Waals. Van der Waals needs quantum effects you need a long range Coulomb potential. If you have a transition metal in your protein, it is crazy to try mean field theory or a classical method. These are strong correlation problems where you're going to have superpositions of states. If you wait until the GPU or the QPU arrives to start thinking, oh, I have a transition metal, you're already too late. So starting to really think of these very, very hard problems now, preparing algorithms, regardless what you use, is the right way to do it, I think.
Awesome. And so on this topic of healthcare, when we think about quantum computers, we think about their speed, we think
speed of the connections. We may have lost Juzar.
The host.
Yes.
Hi there. I can step in where, as Juzar asks or figures out his internet connection, data in healthcare can be messy. Are there any quantum strategies to deal with the messiness of that data? And do you think those results would be reliable?
Thanks, Leo, for plugging in.
Of course. Welcome back, Juzar.
Thank you. I'm back. Sorry, I had a little bit of a minor disconnect there. But yes, please.
I don't know if I just spoke, but I would like to just chime in because this is something that I have been working a lot on since the past year. And it's basically we at Qubit Pharma, we have mitigated that issue of the scarcity of the data by just moving towards complete synthetic data. And we are generating our synthetic data from scratch. And you can see now that a lot of people are doing the same thing. You have Meta launching a huge amount of data. You have Google launching a huge amount of data. And at this point, we almost have a situation where you have significantly more synthetic data than you have experimental data or patient data. I know that Siddhi was mentioning this earlier, the scarcity of data coming from patients. But working with synthetic data is really a way to tackle this issue. But of course, it opens that Pandora box where you can generate whatever data you want, garbagey or not garbagey, cheap or expensive. And this is where the trick becomes, is the quality of your data. Unfortunately, and this is from a personal observation, we are flooded with garbage data at the time, and we are having a lot of issues discerning what is good, what is not good, and I think that this is going to be, and this is the biggest issue that the industry is going to see in the next few years, is how much garbage is in the data that you have. And this is why I wanted to just raise this point. We need, I think, to have better standards, and we need people to stop just saying that we're going to generate millions of molecules out of the blue using garbage methods, or at least if it's not garbage, at least it is on tested methods, or at least not putting the accuracy that comes with each method. And this is my plea for this community here who's listening.
Thanks, Anouar. Karim, what do you think? What are the important things here? I mean, and how does quantum computing help mitigate all these different sort of bottlenecks that we have?
When it comes to data in particular, I think like we also need to find ways of, as I was saying, like having better data and having some standards that we can use, but also like how do we share this data between people? But that problem is doesn't necessarily going to come from the quantum industry itself. It's going to come because this is also a problem in classical machine learning as well, and there's regulatory problems as well there. So how do we communicate with the different policymakers to convey this message as well? And I think if we could share share better data and share data more easily between us, that could also help us like tackle problems in general. But again, it's not necessarily specific to quantum and not specific to and not something we can directly have an influence on.
But also, would you think, Karim, that this solving the data issue seems to be the bigger problem rather than thinking about, speed and accuracy of quantum computers? Because, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and also like yes, the data, I mean the cleanness of the data, but then there's also like when we talk about algorithms, we often focus on the speed of the algorithm, but then there's other bottlenecks like loading the data, unloading the data, the measurement problem. I remember I was talking with some people about a couple of months ago about using like QML or quantum enhanced machine learning for fraud detection. It's like, okay, we can't have these quantum algorithms can do things much faster. But the problem is like, well, the algorithm itself might be faster, but the problem is like the measurement is actually slower than the actual use case that you could have for real world situations. So like identifying all the bottlenecks is also very important, and so that's also something we need to think about. Also, that also comes from even within the quantum industry, like communicating between the people that are developing the algorithms and people that are doing the hardware to know, okay, where should we focus on and what can we, which areas can we improve on that brings a practical speed up.
And just to sort of layer onto that, I think there's really two problems that, at least from my vantage point, I see with the data. One is we're using a lot of classically garnered data and trying to fit it into like a quantum solver. And there's definitely areas, and we're exploring those that's going to be useful. I think there's a tremendous advantage moving forward for quantum data that's acquired from a quantum sensor that naturally lends itself to be better to quantum hardware. And I think in terms of what Anouar was saying about, generating data, I think there's going to be a huge push in the next decade about, pulling data that's orthogonal or like at least slightly orthogonal to the classical data modalities, but are getting pulled from quantum sensors that can give you information and axes that you don't have access to right now. And that, I think, is where the advantage will really start to escalate, because right now we're trying to just, do this thing where we're fitting this square into a triangle. But realistically, I think maybe the solution isn't just about engineering and over-engineering solutions to do things where we have effective AI algorithms to handle this type of data, but instead garnering completely new types of data and then using quantum computers to solve those.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been a fantastic 1 hour. And I just have one last question for all you panelists. What is that one big misconception about careers in quantum technology specifically that you'd like to clarify, especially for the people who want to get into this field? And I'll go. Let's go around the room asking everybody, because I'm sure everybody has a different misconception to talk about, and this would be interesting for our audience members. So I'll start with Clarice once
I'll
again.
start. I think it's a misconception that no one understands quantum physics, that quantum physics cannot be understood, and that only special people can go into quantum. No, everyone belongs in quantum. And in fact, my hope is that, when I was growing up, the only people who learned how to code were people who were going into engineering and physics schools. Nowadays, there are people who learn to code when they're in primary school. I hope the same will happen to quantum, that in the future, everyone with, say, a high school education will have a basic quantum literacy, because we already live in a quantum world. It's not about quantum computers. The world in which you already live only works because of quantum physics. I think quantum learning a little bit of quantum should be a human right. And the misconception is that quantum is special. There's nothing special about quantum, and quantum permeates your life already.
Wow, fantastic message to give. Everybody belongs in quantum. I love that. What about you? Sorry, Anouar.
Clarice, there's a fantastic book called Quantum Mechanics for Babies. I had my 2 kids reading those good books, and they were amazing. So I could have.
I've gifted those books. Yes, they're awesome. Yeah.
They're really good. I think for me, the misconcept is that to do quantum theory, you need to be a quantum physicist or a computer scientist. I don't think from the interactions that I'm having with a lot of quantum computing manufacturers, the problem is not to have one extra quantum physicist to work on the hardware. It's more to find the applications and how to be able to, again, extract that exponential scaling that you will be leveraging with the quantum computer and being able to find those pieces in the type of work that you do to be able to take advantage of them. A second point that Karim raised and that was really important is to understand enough the environment to realize that even if you have the fastest quantum computer, if the communication between your classical and your quantum part fail, you're gonna that's useless type of technology. This type of knowledge, unfortunately, as of today, is compartmented. You will have the people who make the computer on one side, the people who make the application on one side, the people who work on the communication between different pieces on the other side, and you have no communication between all this. Anyone could arrive and work in any of these fields, either from the application point, from the communication point, from the computer point, and he will be adding significant value to the whole ecosystem. So just find that problem that you're interested in, and you will be able to communicate with people.
Wow, that's a really nice message to give. And it somehow also ties back to what Siddhi mentioned much earlier about domain expertise, right? Even though you have your domain expertise, you can actually benefit the entire ecosystem by working on your niche. Karim, what do you think is the biggest misconception?
I mean, I'm probably just going to repeat what the others have already said. Yeah, so it's very important to have like domain expertise. You don't need to be a quantum physicist. Even if you look at the hardware, you need people that works on the electronics, working on the coding, working on the cooling systems, etc. And then on the application side, you need the domain expertise. And also, I like what Clarice said about like, yes, having physics or quantum education for people already in high school. But I think it also goes even before that. Like, I think even for kids, you don't need, of course, you need linear algebra at some point if you want to go into the expertise. But in order to understand quantum phenomena, you don't need that. My daughter is 10 years old, and I've been telling her about quantum physics since she was like 6 or 7. And it's very easy, like you just have to find ways to communicate that. So the communication is very important to try to translate this to people at different age groups and with different expertise. So I think like improving our communication, and also there's so many visualization tools today that we can use to explain some phenomena that we should actually take advantage of them already like in primary schools and in high schools.
Right. And so the theme that's building here is quantum is for everybody, and we would like everybody to join this ecosystem.
100% join this quantum cult.
Yeah, of course. And Alexey, what do you think, according to you, is a misconception?
I would have to add that I think not only do you not need to be a theoretical physicist, you also don't need to have necessarily a PhD to contribute. Like everyone else said, quantum technology needs engineers, chemists, biologists, computer scientists, and educators. So it's a team effort. And another point is look at a more advanced discipline like software design or machine learning. You rarely see people with PhDs making big contributions or being biggest contributors. So it can often be a disadvantage to be stuck in the academic path for so long. So there's no right time to switch to quantum. Yes, and of course we welcome everyone.
Of course. Siddhi, what are your thoughts on this?
Agreed with all of the above. I couldn't agree more. I think maybe from a slightly different perspective, I think there's going to be a lot of crossover between machine learning and AI and quantum field. So, if you're someone who's interested in machine learning and AI, like co-informing yourself with how quantum methods, sensors, algorithms are going to develop, there's going to be a near-term future where everything's going to be hybridized. And it's sort of hard to imagine a future where you're going to find problems that are just isolatedly able to be solved by quantum approaches. So, keeping yourself informed with data science and machine learning, as well as all of these things, is going to be, I think, the way that things evolve. And it isn't so much of we're going to have a quantum computer that breaks all cryptography and solves all biological problems. It's going to be sort of an intelligent co-development of multiple technologies.
Awesome. And Nam, what do you think are the misconceptions?
I think everyone has already said like everything that's out there. But yeah, I think that I do agree that quantum is really for everyone. Like even like there's like high school students, we can even like expose them to they don't have to learn these like superpositions or entanglement in terms of like in the physics subject. It can be like like through games such as like they're like quantum chess or something like that. They can develop intuition on quantum, and I'm sure that this is not just like confined to people in STEM areas, but also either if you have like domain expertise in like let's say like business or even global affairs, that would be like at some point that would be also like important to navigate like supply chain geopolitics and things like that, because the similar with like AI and other emerging fields, it's there, like we have to be ready for it. So
Right. Um, Fantastic. And I think the main message I take out of this is, quantum is for everybody. And people need to obviously develop their domain expertise and find the problem that they love, and they can always contribute to this bigger ecosystem at the end of the day. We have a couple of audience questions as well, and we still have some time, so I would like to ask those, and hopefully the panelists here can help answer those. Uh, the first question that I have is, what do you think of quantum machine learning applications for diagnostics?
So I can maybe take this one because this is kind of what we're exploring right now. So again, just to briefly re-summarize, our application space is looking at taking it multiple different types of cancer data, genomics, pathomics, transcriptomics, and trying to see if we can um, utilize a quantum computer for just a specific subsection of that problem that is feature selection. So the regime that we're in that I kind of alluded to earlier is we're over parameterized relative to number of samples. And finding a subselection of features is something you can do, brute forcefully using a lot of classical approaches. But what that doesn't take into account is sort of higher order interactions. And that's where this sort of exponential, like Hilbert space advantage comes into play, where maybe it isn't just feature 1, feature 10, and feature 20 are relevant, but in the context of multiple features being present at once, it makes a specific feature more relevant than it would be in isolation. So we've been kind of exploring this. I think there's going to be definitely improvement in things of that sort in the future. What we're finding is that we're definitely getting positive results. There are areas and problem spaces that you can find advantage. The issue that we consistently run into is this problem of problem size. So for a lot of these diagnostics problems, we can solve relatively okay solutions with classical approaches by taking a ton of data and just slamming it through a system, and it comes up with a solution. The quantum approach might give you a better result in a very small subset of that problem, but how you find a problem that you can downscale and still find a nuanced result that has real world value is still, I think, where we're kind of trying to grapple with. So there's algorithmic advantages that we can prove, but real world advantages are difficult when you're comparing against, petabytes of data being fed through some like high performance supercomputer at Argonne or somewhere like that.
Right. Oh, yeah, no, that's fantastic. And so to me, it seems that it's already happening, that QML or quantum machine learning is already being used for diagnostics, and it seems to be a very important tool in order to enhance or give you better analysis and better results. Another question that was asked was, we have been speaking about quantum computing, for the work and how it could help us in all these various aspects. So what is the state of the quantum computers or the processors that you actually use in your research? Uh, Anybody could go for it. I mean, Alexey, perhaps.
Sure. So we partner closely with IBM, and so we use their latest devices, which have currently about 156 qubits. And so at this point, we're developing algorithms that are aimed at fully maximizing that capacity of this many noisy qubits. Yeah, that would be my example.
Awesome.
Sorry, if I can just add maybe an alternative solution to or answer to this. So we developed one of the things that we feel like is really interesting, especially for students or for people who want to try this, is also to try with emulators. We discovered that the use of emulators is extremely powerful. We have developed our own, but there are multiple emulators that exist. But the value of an emulator is that it completely abstracts you from the constructor. You don't have to go from one specific technology of quantum computer. And as a person who just focuses on the application, this allows you to really test your algorithms and how would, within the toy problem, of course, because you cannot simulate larger systems, but within the toy problems that you have, you can absolutely test if you have an advantage on an algorithm or another. So I would really encourage people, if they can, if they don't have access, like Moderna has access to IBM latest quantum computers, the use of these emulators are really, really good to be able to get a foot in the door, or even to just be able to test if you have an advantage or not.
Awesome. Yeah. So
If I can,
yeah, of
oh,
course.
sorry, yeah. If I can, yeah, if I can echo, I would say that yeah, emulators are like extremely good if you are just trying to, see if your algorithm can work or like solve a problem. But at some point, if you want to move beyond emulators and you want to try onto like actual QPUs, then it actually would kind of depend on like the architecture that what type of problem. Let's say you to solve a problem with like long range correlations, then probably you want to have a QPU with like own connectivity, or if you want to do some like analog simulations where let's say you want to have a coupling between some vibrational modes and some like electronic excited states, then you probably want to do something like circuit QED, where you have that dispersive interaction. So there's some like technical details behind that as well, but that, yeah, that's what I would put in.
Wow. Okay, so that was an interesting view, going from the state of the art to emulators. It seems everything could be quite useful, and depending on the situation or the background that you come from, perhaps you may not have access to IBM's latest quantum computers or the full device, but you could at least have access to the emulators, which could definitely help progress your own research. Um, I have a question which is more related to publishers, and how about the role of academic publishers in your own effort to bridge communities? Uh, do people in your arena still find the need to publish, and do they think of physics journals for publications, or are you thinking more about biology oriented journals?
Sorry, I must jump in to just state the obvious that the publishing system is broken, very broken at so many different levels. Working as an experimentalist that bridges fields, sometimes it's hard for people to find reviewers for journals. And I kid you not, the last published paper that I have, it's not a top 1% journal, but it's a very decent journal. And I kid you not, 100% of the comments that I got from the one reviewer that they found were about like how the paper was written and not the science. So it's hard to find people to review interdisciplinary science papers. We all know that the system is absolutely broken, and I think that nobody has time, right? So I'm not lazy, you're not lazy, the audience is not lazy, but sometimes the laziness of scientists make science pay dear for that, because we use the name of the journals as proxy for the quality of the research. This is just my manifest that the system is broken, and it's very, very hard to make even more sense of that when you're working across fields. And I'll shut up. Left my anger.
It's all good, and yes, no, I mean, there are definitely issues, and I think a lot of people are working towards resolving them. It's a slow process, unfortunately. We hope things would be much faster. We hope that things will happen overnight, but unfortunately they don't. And we all are a part of the system. unfortunately or fortunately, and we do have a say in it. But where do you all look for publishing, if you at all look for publishing papers, that is?
For us, it depends on the type of work we've done. If it's just pure algorithm work, then it's going to be in some quantum journal, quantum specific journal, or like in the like physical review research, for example, because it has much faster publishing than in others. But if it's like in a specific domain, where then it's going to be in that domain, the domain's public, journal, or in, like if it's like more oriented towards machine learning, this can be in a quantum machine learning or machine learning paper. But it really depends on what type of papers. But I agree with Kai's, like, yeah, having interdisciplinary work is not always easy to know where to make it fit.
Absolutely.
I would also add maybe that the goal of releasing publications, if you're in industry, is different from that in academia, obviously, because in academia, as most of us know, publish or perish. Your career strongly depends on your publication record. In industry, you would be publishing your results for very different reasons. For example, you had your intern and they need help with their academic career, so you want them to have a publication, or you want to sort of popularize a certain research direction. You would not necessarily be publishing your latest or very specific results on the models of most interest to the company for obvious reasons. So yeah, it very much depends on the goal you want to achieve. If it's PR, if it's to go and present at a particular conference, then you would often have like a conference proceedings type of publication, sort of more borrowed from computer science type of events than physics.
I would say that it's from someone who just moved to industry recently. I find it depends a lot of the attitude of the industry that you are in. For example, in our case, we take it as, even if we are in industry and in a very competitive field, that publishing everything that we have, publishing the software that we have, for example, especially when we develop software and algorithms, giving back to the community allows us two things. One, that first of all, nobody questions what we do because everything that we do is open source, and you want to test it, test it. The second thing is that we get the whole community to invest in the softwares that we develop, and we get the benefit of having free labor, between quotes, other researchers using our tools, developing them, making them better. But then, of course, the application is our freedom to use the application for what we want. But that model of publishing what we have and showing the result that we have, you'll see that Meta, for example, is doing something very similar by publishing all their data. Google does the same thing, and we do also the same thing, because this frees us from the rule of having to prove to you that it works. All our research is transparent. It is there. Look at it. It's been peer-reviewed, hammered, destroyed, as Clarice said, by reviewers who either understand or don't understand, or are in competition or not in competition. But we go through that process, and I think that it has value to publish what you are doing, to show what you are doing, to be able to get that benefit from the community. Giving back to the community, I think, is a very, very important aspect, especially when it comes to quantum computers, where a lot of hype exists and a lot of claims can be made without checking.
Awesome. Perhaps the youngest member on this panel is Nam, and I would like, because you're the future, ultimately, the way I see it. And what are your views on publishing, and how do you see this?
Well, yeah, thanks for the thanks for the question. I think this is quite an interesting question for me. I would say, yeah. So I would say, like, early on in the career, and as long as if I stay in academia and in graduate school, then yes, publishing would be like probably like one of it depends too, because if I work more like experimental, it's not just about like being how many papers you publish or how many citations you get, but also like what skills you actually learn, and how do you like can like do you have like the skills to, let's say, later, either if you go to academia or to industry, whether you can be like an independent researcher to push things forward as well. That's also an important thing. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, with that, I think I'll bring this webinar to an end. We are 5 minutes early, which is great always, to give people back their time. It was a pleasure to have you all, and it was a fantastic conversation. And thank you all for informing us, educating us, and teaching us a little bit more about how quantum computing is tackling healthcare today. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Juzar.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.